With Elestral's newest set, Moonrise, now out, Mill finally gets a piece that I think makes this deck click and makes it competitively viable, in the form of Salashade. So today, we'll be taking a look at Mill. To start off the deck, we have 2 copies of Salashade, a 3/3 fire and lunar Elestral that says this Salashade gets +1 attack for each Elestral in your opponent's underworld. When a player casts an Elestral, an opponent must send the top 3 cards of their deck to the underworld. Not only is Salashade a great card because late game he'll work as a huge beater because your opponent should have a decent amount of Elestrals in their underworld by that point, Salashade is also great for his secondary ability of making opponents send their top 3 to the underworld every single time an Elestral is played. Even though it looks like it's extremely slow, with the next card that we'll be taking a look at, this ability can easily just drop the rest of your opponent's deck in a single turn if you're playing in the late game. The next Elestral we'll be playing is 3 copies of Ignector. Ignector is a 1/2 fire Elestral that says when you normal cast this Ignector, you can special cast up to 2 Ignector from your hand or deck in attack position with 1 fire spirit. If you do, you must skip your battle step this turn. This is great for the fact that you can trigger 3 separate instances of Salashade in 1 turn. Not only that, Ignector can work as a way to ascend into your Salashade if you don't already have it on board. Plus, with a lot of the cards that we play in this deck, Ignector can also serve as a Nexus bank, so Ignector is a secret all-star in this deck that needs to be looked out for when playing against Mill. The next Elestral we'll be taking a look at is 3 copies of Humburst, a 1/2 fire Elestral that says when a player casts a rune, an opponent must send the top 2 cards of their deck to their underworld. This Humburst effect can only be activated up to 4 times per turn. That's 8 total cards in a deck if you can get it off. Literally almost 25% of their deck every single turn is extremely strong. Let alone if you're playing against the self-mill decks that are already sending a good chunk of their cards to their graveyard, Mill is in a great spot due to the combination of Salashade and Humburst. As long as you're able to keep your Humburst safe, there's not much that an opponent can do to out your board, or out your game plan and make you lose. In order to help keep our Humburst safe, we'll be playing 2 copies of Kinleo, a 3/1 fire Elestral that says you can Nexus up to 2 fire spirits when you do target and destroy an opponent's Elestral. This will make it so that no matter what size their Elestral is, we can always easily destroy it with as leftover spirits that we have on board. If you have an Ignector, simply cast it out, Nexus from one to another, and Kinleo will destroy even a Blistrix. Kinleo is an extremely strong card that as long as you can protect in a majority of games, even not Mill decks, you'll pretty much win guaranteed. So we're always going to play it in order to help us guarantee that we can cross the finish line. To pair with our Kinleo and also with our Mill strategy, we'll be playing 2 copies of Cinder, a 3/2 fire Elestral that says when the Cinder receives 1 or more fire spirits, your opponents must send the top 3 cards of their deck to the underworld. Cinder's extremely strong due to the fact that you can continuously trigger and mill multiple cards in a single turn. Not only that, but you can also easily just Nexus to it with Kinleo and pop a card while milling 3. Plus there's other cards in this deck that we have that we can Nexus to in order to mill more. The next Elestral we'll be playing is 2 copies of Rummikul, a 2/2 fire Elestral that says when you normal cast this Rummikul, you can search your deck for a Stadium Rune or a Stoke the Forge and add it to your hand. This Rummikul gets +1 attack for each fire enchanting it as long as Volcanic Forge is enchanted. Rummikul is a great addition to this deck for a multitude of reasons. Number 1, it counts as an Elestral summon for Salashade, so you will mill 3 when you have a Salashade out. Number 2, it searches your deck for 2 separate runes that you can cast for Humburst, so it can count as 2 mill with Humburst. 3, it searches a Nexus bank that you can utilize in the form of Volcanic Forge. And 4, the fact that you can search literally every single Elestral in your deck by playing Stoke the Forge if you already have a Volcanic Forge. Rumble is kind of a jack of all trades in this deck, and is a great pick for this deck. Now, we might be a mill deck, but we still do need the ability to be over opposing elestrals. So in order to accomplish this, while furthering our mill plan, we'll be playing 2 copies of Lumaru. Lumaru is a 5/2 solar elestral that says when this Lumaru destroys an opponent's elestral in battle, that opponent must send the top 3 cards of their deck to their underworld. And finally, we'll be playing 3 copies of Aster Rabbit. Aster Rabbit is simply the best card in the entire game, in my opinion, even still. With its big booty and its ability to find any card that fits the situation, Aster Rabbit is the ultimate consistency piece that slows everybody down just enough for our deck to get up and running. To start off the runes, we'll be playing 2 copies of Volcanic Forge. I'll be honest, this is just a searchable Nexus Bank. We have a lot of cards in here that want us to have a few extra spirits on board, and Volcanic Forge is a card that'll allow us to do that. Not only that, we also have to play it for our next card, which is 2 copies of Stoke the Forge. Stoke the Forge is a 1-cost fire invoke rune that says this Stoke the Forge can only be cast if Volcanic Forge is enchanted, hence why we're playing it. Search your deck for a 1-spirit fire elestral and add it to your hand. Not only is this great because Stoke the Forge is easily searchable by Rummagem, also the fact that you can find obviously any of our 1-drop fire elestrals that we want to fit the situation, and it's a rune, so it does also trigger a Humbust mill. Stoke the Forge is an extremely strong deck that we're willing to play a Volcanic Forge for. To help us ensure we don't just get ran over by large elestral or beatdown decks, we'll be playing 1 copy of Earthquake. Earthquake is unconditional removal, which you always slot in as long as you have the spirits for it. And this deck very easily has the spirits for it, so we're definitely going to play it to help us with the big guy decks. And our next card is Resting on Your Laurels. Since we do play a little bit lower to the ground, there'll be a lot of times where opponents has more spirits on board than us, so Resting on Your Laurels is frequently live in this deck, more so than in others. And our final invoke rune that we'll be playing is 3 copies of Ambrosia. Since everything costs your life to play in this deck, Ambrosia is always going to be included as a 3-of, so we're also playing it in this deck, even though we don't really care too much about spirit differential. To start off the counter runes, we'll be playing 2 copies of Divine Blessing. Divine Blessing is a 1-cost Omni rune that says this Divine Blessing can be cast when an opponent activates an invoke rune. Disenchant 1 from the field in order to negate that rune. Divine Blessing has seen an extreme increase in play lately, and I told people a long time ago that this card was extremely good and had many arguments about it, and nobody believed me. But this card is insanely busted, especially in a deck like this, mainly due to the fact that Hurricane exists. This card will protect you from Hurricane, sending all of your counter runes and your soul straight to the underworld. Not only that, it counters Ambrosia, Earthquake, Cryoblast, literally any form of invoke removal that they can do, plus a lot of the healing in this game. This card is a card that you should pick up immediately if you don't have any. The next counter rune we'll be playing is 2 copies of Altar of Stars. Altar of Stars is a great card in this deck because it allows us to use the extra spirits on board in order to protect our Elestrals. Not only that, but you can trigger both Humbust and a Cinder with playing Altar of Stars. And the rest of the rune package is pretty typical, starting with 3 copies of Gorgon's Gaze in order to shut down anything that an opposing Elestral might want to do. We're playing 3 copies of Poison Tipped Arrow for the -2 attack to possibly save some of the Elestrals that we have on in this deck, and also for the just hard removal factor of it. And then we're playing 2 copies of Tsunami, because while water is kind of popular, it's not necessarily the most prevalent thing in the game, and being able to send everything to defense position and fog an entire battle phase is extremely strong for this deck. Moving on to the Spirit deck, we'll be playing 1 Owloon for our Salashade, 1 Luminape for our Lumaru, 2 Taratlus for our Earthquake, 2 Zaptor for our Aster Rabbit, 2 Levyfin for our Tsunamis, and then 12 by Pyro for the rest of the deck. So what do you think of the deck? Would you play it? Let me know down in the comments below, and let me know if there's anything that you're interested in seeing me build. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to like and subscribe as I do post content daily. I hope you all have a good day, and peace.